Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So I'm going to show you how I'll convert a basic bodice block to an off-shoulder bustier pattern. Okay, so what I'm marking now is the vertical measurements. So from the shoulder to the bust point of the client I'm working with is 10 inches. Shoulder to the underbust is 14 inches. Shoulder to the waistline, which is the half length, is 17.5 inches. I first marked 18 inches, but I later corrected it to 17.5 inches. Then from that 17.5 inches, I'll mark 9 inches down to get the hip line. I know the style on the thumbnail is a medium length gown, but my client requested that I make it a long gown for her, so we're going to be completing the gown length on the fabric that we're going to be using. I will show you guys everything, so stay tuned. All right, I'm marking this measurement in another place on the pattern paper so I'll get a straight line. So I'm using 9 inches because my client is tall. If the client is not too tall, go ahead and use 8 inches. Okay, so here I'm correcting that waistline is meant to be at 17.5 and not 18 inches. So I'll join the points to get a straight line. So guys, remember the pattern is folded into two. Actually mine is a single one, but assume that the pattern is folded into two. So the shoulder measurement I'm working with is 15. You divide the shoulder by 2, so I placed it what I got, which is 7.5 there, and the neck width and neck depth that I use is just 3 inches by 3 inches. Remember I said I'm going to be converting this basic block that we are drafting now to an off-shoulder pattern. So I'm just drafting the basic block for now. So it's actually very simple to do. So on that shoulder that I marked, I'll come down by 1 inch to create my shoulder slant. Okay. So for the armhole, what I always do is the bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So I got 8 inches. So I'm going to be connecting with a straight line. And I'll draw out the chest line like so. I believe what I'm doing is self-explanatory though. So I'm going to be dividing that line. So yeah, I am marking with my marker. I'm labeling everything with my marker so you guys will know. That is the bust point line, the under bust line, the half length, that is the waistline, and the hips. Okay, I'm meant to use a marker to draft all this, but I don't think my marker was just misbehaving, guys, so I decided to use a pen. So I hope this is visible enough. So I'm going to be dividing that armhole line by 2. So 8 inches divided by 2 is 4. So I'll come in from that point by ½ inch. So I'll get a perfect armhole, front armhole curve. I always use ½ inch. So I'm going to place the bust measurement divided by 4 on that chest line. So bust I'm working with is 39 divided by 4. I got 9.75. So I marked it there. Okay, and I will curve with, I'll get a perfect armhole curve like so. Okay, so now I'm going to place all the horizontal measurements, but before we do that, let us place the darts. So the bust span measurement that I'm working with is 7.5 inches, and 7.5 divided by 2 is 3.75. So that is what I'm marking on both the bust point line, the under bust line, the waistline, and the hips. So I'll get a straight line. Okay, I'll connect all those points. So on the waistline, I'm going to be going in with a dart of half inch on both sides. So I'll place half inch on both sides to make it a total of 1 inch. And on the hips line, I'm going to be coming up by 1.5 inches. You can do as much as 2 inches, but I came up with 1.5 inches, and I'll connect with a straight line. So I'm going to connect that dart to the bust point as well. Okay, so now we're going to place the horizontal measurements on those lines. So on the bust point line, I'm going to place the bust circumference measurement divided by 4, which is 9.75. I'll mark it there. On the half length, I'm going to place the waist measurement divided by 4, and what I got is 9.25. So I'll mark that. Remember the 1 inch that you're going to put it back, so I'll add it. Okay, and I'll go ahead and connect these points now with a straight line. So on the hips line, I'm going to mark the hip circumference measurement, which is 45 inches divided by 4. Remember, you divide it by 4. Divided by 4 is 11.25. So I'll mark it on that hip line. And I'll connect with a straight line as well. Okay, so by so doing, we're through drafting the basic block. So now we're going to convert this block into an off-shoulder pattern. So where I want my off shoulder to start is from 6 inches. So I'm measuring from that shoulder line to 6 inches. I'll take the measurement again. Please watch the place I placed the shoulder the tape. So I placed it from the shoulder line and I marked 6 inches, and I'm connecting with a straight line. Okay, this is where our off-shoulder bustier is going to be starting from. So now I'm going to tighten the underbust. So the underbust round measurement that I'm working with is 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8 inches. So I'll mark the 8 inches there. So I'm going to be using a red pen so you guys will see everything I'm doing clearly. I'll mark the 8 inches, and what I have remaining is 2 inches. Okay, so this 2 inches now, I'm going to share it among those two dart legs. Remember, it's not the center line. I'm going to be sharing it among those two dart legs, and I'm not sharing it equally. I'm placing ½ inch towards the center part. Okay, then 1.5 inches I'm going to placing it towards that side front. Please, if you don't understand what I just said now, watch this again and you're going to get it. I'll still show you guys what I did. The round waist measurement is 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8 inches. So 8 inches, I placed that 8 inches there and I marked it. Then the remaining, what I got as the remaining on my pattern is 2 inches. So that 2 inches is what I shared between the two dart legs. Remember where I'm placing the, look at where I'm placing the dart. I'm placing the tape. I'm not placing it on the center line. I'm placing it among those two dart legs. So I'll go ahead and use my curve and connect to the bust point. If you don't understand what I explained, watch it again and I promise you, you will get it. It's really easy and self-explanatory. So I'll go ahead and curve it like that, and I'm using my marker to make it visible enough. I just got this marker and it was actually misbehaving, so that's why I did not use it to draft everything, but I hope the pen I used is visible enough. So I'm going to connect this part as well to the bust point. Okay, by so doing we've tightened the under bust. So now I'm going to match up my darts, and please make sure you eliminate any pointy sharp edge. Make sure you curve it when you're cutting out your pattern. So as we've tightened the underbust, now we're going to go ahead and tighten the overbust. Okay, so remember this part that I marked, the 6 inches I marked from the shoulder down, that is where we're going to be tightening the overbust, because that is where our off shoulder is starting from. So I'll first divide that my shoulder slant into 2. Okay, divide it into 2. So I'll divide that shoulder slant into 2 and I'll connect with a straight line to the bust point. Okay, now we're going to be tightening it right there. So I'm tightening with 0.75 inches on both sides of that line. So I'm placing 0.75 inches, that's a total of 1.5 inches. Depending on your client, you can go as much as 1 inch to tighten, but I think anything more than 1 inch for tightening will be too tight. Okay, so I'm using 0.75 inches on both sides, which is 1.5 inches. Then I'll connect with a straight line like so. So I'm showing that I'm going to be cutting that out, and also I'm going to cutting this part out. So all those parts that I'm marking now, they are going off. So now our front half length is 17.5 inches and the back half length is 15.5 inches. So it has a difference of 2 inches. So that difference is what I'm using as the bust dart. So watch the way I placed it from that bust point downwards. That is where I placed the 2 inches, and I'm connecting it to the bust point with a straight line. Okay, so by so doing, our front pattern is going to match perfectly to our back pattern. So I'm using a pen to make everything visible enough. Okay, so to get the neckline, The strap to strap measurement that I have is 10 inches. So remember our pattern is on fold. So 10 inches divided by 2 is 5 inches. So I'm going to place from that, I'm going to place my tape from the first start leg to the center, which I got as 3.5, and I'll continue the measurement from the second dart leg and I'll mark the 5 inches. Again, I'm going to show you what I did. So with the 5 inches, remember we're going to be cutting out that there, so you're not just going to place the 5 inches and mark. So from the first dart leg, you're going to start placing your measurements, and I got 3.5 there. So I'll continue that 3.5 there from that second dart leg. Again, if you don't understand what I just explained, please watch this video again, and I promise you, you will get it. So I'm going to open one dart, so I will close that overbust dart, and I'll get my neckline. So I've done that, and I added pattern paper, so I'll add my allowance on my pattern. And I'm sorry, I'm having a sore throat, and I really want to put this video out because it's been on my phone for days now. I've been so busy trying to get everything perfect before I'll post the video. So thank you for those that have subscribed already, and if you haven't, please consider subscribing to my channel. You're not going to regret subscribing. Thank you for those that watch my videos. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. So I'm just using, so I mean, I drew out a very slight sweetheart neckline. I don't want it to be too deep. So I'm going to go ahead and close up the bust darts as well. So close up the bust dart before you cut out your pattern, or before you add all your allowance or your pattern. Okay. So I use a tape and hold it down. Okay. And I'll go ahead and match up my measurements. As you can see, it's not matched up very well. So I'm going to go ahead and match it up with a ruler. Then I'll add my allowance. I'm going to be using allowance of 2.5 inches on both the bust points and the hips. So I'm placing 2.5 inches allowance. Guys, please always add allowance to the outfits that you're making. So I'm using 2.5 inches allowance. Okay, I'm going to connect my new armhole now with a straight line like so. I'm pointing straight to the allowance. Remember, I'm pointing straight to the allowance, not to the main measurement. So I'm trying to eliminate all the sharpness, and I'll go ahead and cut this out, and by so doing, our front pattern is ready. So go ahead and cut it out. Watch the way I'm cutting this. Take your time and cut this so you don't make any mistake. So I'll go ahead and blend in that pointy part. Okay, you don't want anything to be pointy. Yes, so go ahead and blend it. You're not going to be losing anything on your pattern, so just blend this. Okay, so by so doing, we're through with the front pattern. So I'm going ahead to label it. Honestly, this my marker disappointed me. I really wanted to use a marker to draft this, but it was just misbehaving. So I'm showing you have to cut the center front on fold, and you cut 2 pieces of that side front. So let's go ahead and draft the back pattern. So I've placed the pattern paper I'm going to be using, and I'll first mark my zip allowance, and I'm using 1 inch for the zip allowance. Yes, the back is going to be having a zipper, so I'll place 1 inch as the zip allowance. And I'll connect it with a straight line. So I marked it in so many places because I'm using an A4 paper, and you know I joined it with a sellotape, so I'm using an A4 paper. That was why I'm marking it in different places, so I'll get a straight line. So this is going to be the zip allowance. So I'm marking it zip allowance. So remember, all your measurements is going to start from that mark outwards. You're not going to be including your zip allowance in any of your measurements. So now I'm placing the shoulder measurement, which is 7.5 inches. Remember, it's 15, but because our pattern is folded into 2, you divide that 15 by 2, which is 7.5 inches. And also remember, I am not adding the zip allowance in any of the measurements. Just ignore that 1 inch that I marked. Ignore it. So I'm using a basic neck width and neck depth of 3 inches by 1 inch. So the neck width is 3 inches and neck depth is 1 inch. We're not going to be making use of this part, but because I'm drafting this pattern from scratch, that means I'm starting from the basic block. That is why I included this part, but we really do not need this yoke and all that. So remember, the shoulder slants 1 inch. I'll just use 1 inch for the shoulder slant, and I'll connect it like so. And the armhole we have is 8 inches. That means the bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches is 8 inches. So now I'll place the vertical measurements. So from the shoulder to the bust point is 10 inches. So for the back, we do not need the under bust measurement. So I'm just placing from shoulder to where my off shoulder started from, which is 6 inches, to my bust point, which is 10 inches, to the waist line. I remember the waistline for the back is 15.5 inches. Then for that 15.5 inches, I will now count 9 inches down to get the hip line. And what I got for the back is 24.5 inches. Okay. Remember, our front pattern is shortened with, our front pattern is longer than our back pattern with 2 inches. Okay, so I'm going to mark it in another place so I'll get a straight line. So I'm connecting it with a straight line. Guys, please consider subscribing to my channel. Please turn on the bell notification so you get notified anytime I upload. And I promise you guys, I'm going to be uploading, I'm going to be putting out videos, and please you're not going to regret subscribing. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to place the bust palm measurement. Remember, the bust palm measurement we're working with is 7.5 inches, and 7.5 divided by 2 is 3.75. So we're going to place that 3.75 on both the bust point line, the waistline, and the hips line, and also the chest line. Yeah. So I'll connect those points with a straight line. So for the back pattern, I don't really tighten that chest line. I don't really tighten the chest line of the back pattern. So on that waistline, I'm going to go in with a dart of half inch on both sides. Remember, on the hip line, I'll come up by 1.5 inches and I'll connect the darts. And on the chest line, I'm going to go down by 1 inch. So I'll connect all these darts. I really hope this pen that I used is visible enough. Okay, now remember the strap to strap measurement that we have is 10 inches, and that 10 inches divided by 2 is 5 inches. So it's 5 inches that you're going to be placing at the back to get your back neckline as well. So I just divided that armhole line by 2, which is 4, and I came in by 0.25, not 5.5 inch, but 0.25, and I'm placing the bust circumference measurement divided by 4, that is 9.75 on that chest line, and I'll connect with a curve to get the back armhole curve. You actually do not need this part, but I just wanted to complete the back basic block before I'll move straight to getting the off shoulder out from it. So I'm placing the bust circumference measurement divided by 4 on the bust point line. Okay, on the waist line, remember the waist circumference measurement divided by 4 plus the 1 inch dart, which we'll have as 10.25. I'll mark that. And on the hip line, you divide the hip circumference measurements by 4, and what I got is 11.25. I'll place it there and I'll mark. I'll connect all those lines with a straight line. So on that chest line, remember the strap to strap measurements. We're going to divide it by 2 to get 5. So that is what I placed there, 5 inches. And I'm just going with a very slight round neck at the back, very slight one. I'm not making any deep neckline because of how my clients requested it. Just ask your clients, make sure your client is someone that, okay, maybe if they want something deep, you give it to them. If they want something not too deep, make sure you satisfy your clients. So I just did a very slight neckline and I'll connect it to the zip allowance. I remember all the measurements I took, I did not include the zip allowance to it. So I'm going to be adding extra sewing allowance of 2.5 inches on my pattern. I like adding allowance on my pattern. So on that waistline, I added 3 inches allowance there because we're going to be curving that zip allowance to eliminate the zip bulge at the back. We're going to be creating a dart around that zip allowance part. So that was why I included that dart on my zip allowance, on my allowance that I added to the side. So now to eliminate that zip bulge on that waistline, I'm going to go in by 1/2 inch like so. Okay, I'm going in by 1/2 inch. So it's that 1/2 inch that I added on that allowance part, so anything will not short from my pattern. So I'll go in by 1/2 inch like so. I believe what I'm doing right now is self-explanatory, so go ahead and connect it as I'm doing. And if you don't understand what I just did, please watch it again and I promise you, you will understand. Okay, by so doing, we've eliminated that zip bulge at the back. Okay, so I'm going in with a curve to make sure it's curvy. It's not supposed to be pointy or all that. Make sure it's curvy. So that part will be going out and this part will also be going out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and cut everything out. Yeah, I actually did the whole cutting on camera so you guys will see what I'm doing. That is why this video is lengthy, but I hope you guys learned something from this video. So I'll cut everything out and our pattern is ready. Please stay tuned. I'm going to be posting the second part of this video, that is when I'll place it on the fabric, I'll cut and I'll sew. I'm going to show every single thing that I'll be doing on this outfit. So guys, please, if you find this video helpful, please consider liking, consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for those that have subscribed. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video. Remain blessed. Bye.